This week from the global lane, President Trump keeps a campaign promise and announces he's moving the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. It's about more than just Israel. More intrigue and truth coming to light on the home front. We'll talk to the American Center for Law and Justice about that Clinton tarmac meeting and the latest FBI document dump. Who is withholding the information? We'll set it straight on presidential impeachment. And Mathew Lee, our man on the street, asked people what they think. Should Trump be impeached? And I'll drive it home on Jerusalem. Is it truly the capital of Israel? And it's all right here, right now, from the global lane. President Trump has done something no other president has done since the creation of the modern state of Israel 68 years ago. He's officially recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and he's moving the U.S. Embassy there from Tel Aviv. CBN News White House correspondent Jennifer Wishon brings us that story.
By recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and moving the U.S. Embassy there, President Donald Trump has secured his place in history and demonstrated another reason why Americans elected an outsider not beholden to tradition.
We cannot solve our problems by making the same failed assumptions and repeating the same failed strategies of the past.
After decades of failed peace negotiations and a continuation of violence, President Trump says it's time to do something different.
It is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
For decades, Democrats and Republicans running for president dangled the promise of recognizing Jerusalem, only to fail to follow through once in office. President Trump delivered. He says he's just acknowledging reality, that Jerusalem has been Israel's capital for decades, and kicking off a new strategy for peace while reaffirming that the U.S. would support a two-state solution if that's what both sides agreed to.
Above all, our greatest hope is for peace, the universal yearning in every human soul.
Immediately, enthusiastic praise poured in from a diverse group of evangelical leaders. Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee says President Donald Trump did what his predecessors didn't have the courage to do. In doing so, he set two great examples: how to make good on promises and how to treat your friends. Reverend Samuel Rodriguez says the historical record, empirical fact, and our faith all confirm that Jerusalem is in fact the capital of the Jewish people. I therefore enthusiastically applaud President Trump's decision. And Bishop Harry Jackson says it marks the beginning of a new season in U.S. Middle East policy. The previous administration allowed persecution, terrorism, and stereotyping of the Israeli people. President Trump called for a continuation of the status quo at Jerusalem's holy sites.
Jerusalem is today and must remain a place where Jews pray at the Western Wall, where Christians walk the stations of the cross, and where Muslims worship at Al-Aqsa Mosque.
With the president's announcement, now architects, engineers, and planners will begin building America's new embassy in Jerusalem. It will take some time to complete, but the president says he's building a magnificent tribute to peace. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, the White House.
Palestinians responded with riots in Hebron and pledged 3 days of rage. Turkish President Erdogan said Trump is putting the entire region in a ring of fire. The reaction was more positive in Israel. Israelis were elated. CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell has more.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu led a chorus of Israeli officials praising and thanking President Trump.
This is a historic day. Jerusalem has been the capital of the Jewish people for 3,000 years. It's been the capital of Israel for nearly 70 years. President Trump, thank you for today's historic decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. The Jewish people and the Jewish state will be forever grateful.
Just minutes after President Trump's decision, which was 8 p.m. Israel time, the city of Jerusalem adorned the walls of the old city behind me with a projected image that said, December 6th, Jerusalem applauds President Trump.
I think, if anything, this move will further and bring peace forward, since our neighbors have to realize that in any scenario, Jerusalem is the capital of the Jewish people.
But Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas condemned Trump's decision.
Trump's decision tonight will not change the status of Jerusalem and will not give any legitimacy to Israel in this issue because Jerusalem is a Palestinian, an Arab Islamic Christian city, and the eternal capital of Palestine.
The PA called for 3 days of rage, while a chorus of voices in the region echoed the Palestinian Authority president. The IDF reported rioting by Hamas, and Hamas also organized this march of anger. Turkey's President Erdogan said Trump crossed a red line and called for an Islamic summit next week to discuss the decision. Turkey's foreign minister warned it threatened the region.
This is an extremely irresponsible and wrong statement. Not only do we not accept this statement, we strongly condemn it because this kind of statement endangers the region's stability and security.
Yet many evangelicals applauded the decision. Mike Evans of the Friends of Zion Museum in Jerusalem unfurled a banner that says, "God bless Trump from Jerusalem, D.C., David's capital, to Washington, D.C."
We believe what he did is going to bring the blessing of God on our own country, America.
Evans compared President Trump to another U.S. President, Harry Truman, who 70 years ago, against the advice of his own State Department and many advisors, recognized the newly declared State of Israel. Evans believes we're seeing prophecy come to pass.
And as somebody that's wanted and prayed and hoped for this for more than 40 years, I see us in the middle of prophecy right now.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Now, there's more to President Trump's decision than just moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. Here to explain is American Enterprise Institute fellow, military and security analyst Thomas Donnelly.
I think this reflects a change that is pretty marked in the Trump administration. And I have to give the administration a lot of credit for really sorting out American strategy toward the Middle East in a way that the previous administration, with good intentions to be sure, went badly off the rails. The Trump administration has remembered that our fundamental allies in the region are the moderate Arab regimes and the Israelis, not the Iranians, and that the Iranians are the sole pretender to hegemony in the Persian Gulf and in the Middle East more broadly. So in addition to really aligning himself with the Israelis, he's done the same with the Saudis and the Egyptians, for example. Those are not easy decisions to make, and those regimes are problematic in a large way. But compared to the danger, none of them is a danger to become the preeminent power or the dominant hegemon in the Middle East. But Iran is. And so now we see the Trump administration lashing itself more firmly to these allies, beginning with Israel.
So it isn't just about Israel, it's about also the moderate allies in the Middle East.
Correct. I mean, the interesting thing, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, this would have created a furor across the Arab world. The Palestinians have promised a day of rage, and I do think it increases the prospect of an Israeli war with Hezbollah, both in Lebanon and perhaps in Syria. So there is that downside to it. But if there's ever to be stability in the Middle East, and in particular, if we are to contain and roll back Iranian influence, it can only be through a closer alliance with the Israelis and the moderate Arab states. And you're not going to see a huge outcry in the streets of Riyadh or Cairo the way you would, again, like 10 years ago or so. These moderate Arab regimes understand both the threat from Iran and have made a kind of quiet peace with Israel, and in fact have a good deal of strategic and intelligence sharing going on between them.
Classified emails on private servers, an ill-timed tarmac meeting, Russian collusion. As the investigations continue, more truth is revealed in Washington. The latest involves the FBI and information it possesses about a June 2016 meeting between then Attorney General Loretta Lynch and former President Bill Clinton. It happened on an airport tarmac in Phoenix less than a week before presidential candidate Hillary Clinton was interviewed by the FBI. The American Center for Law and Justice wanted to see the notes and documents and filed a Freedom of Information request with the FBI. A lack of response forced the ACLJ to file a lawsuit against the Department of Justice. They've just received 29 pages of documents. Here to reveal what's in the documents and to discuss Washington collusion is the ACLJ's Mathew Clark. So, Mathew, what did the 29 pages of documents reveal?
Well, the 29 pages of documents we received from the FBI, in conjunction with another 400 pages of documents that we've already received from the DOJ in both of our lawsuits, have revealed that both the DOJ and the FBI bureaucracies have been withholding key information from the American public about that fateful meeting between former President Bill Clinton and Attorney General Loretta Lynch.
Well, Mathew, it seems there, as you say, there's still an effort from the FBI to prevent all the information about that tarmac meeting and the Clinton email investigation from getting out. Now, this is Donald Trump's FBI and DOJ, is it not? So why are they holding back?
It's members of the deep state bureaucracy. We see some of these individuals have been involved in senior positions in both the Mueller investigation and the Clinton investigation, and have been shown up in these documents as well, which raises serious concerns. Now, some of these documents are heavily redacted, so we don't know still today, even with our lawsuits, what those documents contain and the talking points that have been passed back and forth between the DOJ and the FBI that they have still hidden from the American public regarding the tarmac meeting. That's why this week we were back in federal court to obtain what those documents were, and also to point out to a federal judge that we are obtaining documents from the FBI that the DOJ is withholding, and documents from the DOJ that the FBI is withholding. So that means there are more documents that both of these agencies are withholding us and from us, and we're going to get to the bottom of it.
Well, I think most Americans would wonder with a new FBI director, Chris Wray, why he wouldn't be turning this over unless this is still part of an investigation that's going on. What are your thoughts?
Well, there's a possibility of ongoing investigations, but what we are learning from these documents is that this continues to be a very bureaucratic red tape, prevent the American people from seeing what was happening during the Obama administration tactic that has been employed. And we've seen this across all of our FOIA lawsuits, whether it's against the Department of State bureaucracy, whether it's against the DOJ bureaucracy, or the FBI bureaucracy, that they are withholding documents regarding the Obama administration, forcing us to go to court to obtain those documents. These are not decisions that are reaching the desk of the new FBI director. These are decisions that are being made by those individuals within the bureaucracy, and you really can't fire them. You can try to reassign them, but you can't fire them.
What did you learn about James Comey, the former FBI director, and his role in this tarmac meeting, or what he knew about it?
Well, information that was previously unknown until this week, until we received these 29 pages from the FBI, is that within 8 minutes of the first media request coming to the DOJ regarding this Clinton-Lynch tarmac meeting, so we're talking about on June 28th of 2016, within 8 minutes, that information was given to the FBI. By the next day, we have emails from Director Comey himself pointing out this meeting, and then we have the talking points that were sent from the DOJ to the FBI, again, previously undisclosed by the Department of Justice and the FBI, reached Director Comey within 3 minutes of going from the DOJ to the FBI. We also know that some of his key deputies, one of which Peter Strzok, went on to be on Mueller's team, was later fired by Mueller or reassigned. He was the one who actually was involved in changing at the last minute Director Comey's statement to change some words, some key words about the legal definition of what constituted Hillary Clinton's mishandling of classified information. Those changes were an attempt to make it appear that it didn't fit the statute. Now we know it fit exactly the criminal statute, and it raises some serious questions. Now he's been removed, but some others who have made some questioning statements about the president, who are involved in affairs and other things during the time that they were part of the investigation of both Hillary Clinton and now part of the matter involving Mueller's team. It raised some serious questions that deserve answers.
Calls for the impeachment of President Trump continue despite the dismal failure of a handful of Democrats to pass 5 articles of impeachment in the U.S. House of Representatives. Congressman Al Green of Texas led the charge against Trump. Just listen to what he had to say.
Resolved that Donald John Trump, President of the United States, is unfit to be president and is impeached for high misdemeanors committed as president, constituting harm to American society to the manifest injury of the people of the United States.
The vote wasn't even close. It was an overwhelming vote against impeachment, 364 to 58. While all 58 votes to impeach came from Democrats, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi wasn't one of them. She said now is not the time for impeachment. So that leads one to wonder, what does she mean by that? May there be a time when it is brought up again? Is it just wishful thinking on the part of Democrats? Or is there a real case against President Trump? Here to set us straight on the issue of impeachment is prominent Texas attorney Barbara Rodnofsky, and she's listed as one of America's best lawyers. She was the first woman to gain Democratic Party nomination for the U.S. Senate in 2006. Ms. Rodnofsky, thanks for joining us. So let's take a look at this case for impeachment. Is there a case, or are some members of your party just sore losers?
I don't think they're sore losers. I will say that the New York Times editorial this morning by John Yoo, who is hardly a Democrat, who discussed the possibility of impeachment for corruption and called for impeachment, he said, in lieu of criminal prosecution, shows that I think there is a general understanding that impeachment may lie for misconduct or failure to do his duty of a president. It's a matter of needing to understand whether or not a case has been proven for criminal prosecution, of course, is still up in the air. That all remains to be seen. Impeachment's absolutely independent, for example, of an obstruction of justice charge.
The intent of impeachment, is it a political decision or is it a criminal one?
It is a political question, and it is not a criminal proceeding. It's been misunderstood over the years, but there is no question, and all of the 19 cases of impeachment that we've had in this country all prove that it is not a criminal proceeding. Double jeopardy doesn't apply, and the only penalty from impeachment is that the officer, if convicted, is removed from office. On 3 rare occasions, an officer has also been barred from future office holding.
And only 2 presidents, correct, that have been impeached?
Exactly. As a matter of fact, the Nixon impeachment, what people call impeachment for President Nixon, was an investigation, a voting out of articles of impeachment from the House Judiciary Committee, but Nixon, seeing the handwriting on the wall, resigned.
Let's talk about this president. Can President Trump rightfully dismiss, fire the FBI director if he feels he's mishandling his duties?
James Madison addressed this very issue about whether the wanton removal of an officer whose merit meant that he should be retained. And so in this instance, much depends on why the officer was fired.
I think we're hearing a lot now about obstruction of justice. The president may have obstructed justice. If the president said to James Comey, take it easy on Flynn, he's a good guy, is that actually obstructing justice?
Well, if you're asking from a criminal standpoint, as opposed to an impeachment standpoint, the questions may be different. In obstructing justice as alleged by criminal prosecutors, there are certain elements that need to be proven. You read a lot about it in the paper, and it does depend on the state of mind and the purpose of doing it. For impeachment does not look to the intent of the president. Impeachment looks to whether or not the president's conduct has caused harm. And it has to be substantial harm, sir. It has to cause substantial harm. So intent is absolutely not required for impeachment.
Well, what do you expect will happen here if Democrats regain the House of Representatives in 2018? Might impeachment proceedings begin against President Trump in early 2019?
If I had to speculate, I think so. It only requires a majority to impeach a president.
Now we're into this era since Nixon, where it seems like every 20, 25 years, a president is impeached or is forced to resign. Nixon, and then Bill Clinton was impeached, and now talk about impeaching President Trump. What is going on with our society? Is this going to be the new norm?
Well, with all due respect, the way the founding fathers intended impeachment, it was a norm. And there is no question that as Congress streamlined its procedures, all impeachments, not just presidential, federal impeachments are on the rise.
I think some people are concerned that it does harm the country when you go through this whole political process of impeachment and so forth. And I think there's a concern that lose an election, we'll just impeach the president.
You know, the founding fathers addressed that issue, and they very much, because it requires 2/3 conviction in the Senate, they very much debated this. Hamilton wrote extensively on the issue, and he said it's not a perfect process, but it is so much better than the British process. So I hear your argument, but let me say, Edmund Randolph, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, these men, these geniuses who added this process and adapted it from the British, knew what they were doing. The only other result would be unchecked executive power, and there was a concern about tyranny. It's why we fought the revolution.
Many on the political left would love to see it happen, impeachment, and then the removal of Donald Trump from the presidency. What does the average American think? Do they even know what impeachment is and how the process works? We asked reporter Meng-Fei Lee to take it to the streets to find out.
So there has been a lot of talks about our president. And one of the topics people are saying our president should be impeached. Well, do you think our president should be impeached?
I don't feel qualified to make those kinds of decisions. I hope for the best, and I pray for our government every day.
I would just second that. I think that's, exactly what, I don't think that's something that I personally would make a call on.
To be impeached, there has to be certain criteria. And so at this point, I think we've got to do a further investigation to see if there's enough evidence to impeach him. So I would say at this point, keep the investigation going, and then we'll look at the results and take it from there in a typical democratic process.
I think our president is a great president. I'm delighted with him. I believe that he was appointed by God to his office, and I support him.
For one thing, he doesn't know how the U.S. government works. He's vile. He treats anybody who is below himself like crap, and as a descendant of American immigrants, I find that offensive. And I could go on, but... Sure. Well, the next question is, now, do you know what does the Constitution say about impeaching a president? I really wish I could. I haven't not had the chance to thoroughly research the Constitution as I would like. But I do believe there's a process that needs to be done in order to do so. Otherwise, we would have impeached like half the presidents we have up to this point in our country's history.
Well, I think that he should, because the obstruction of justice that's happened recently with him and Russia and stuff like that. So I believe that he should. I know that Congress and the Senate have to pass the impeachment. So I don't think it's going to happen because the Republican Party owns that. So I don't believe it's going to happen anytime soon, unfortunately.
It was a historic moment at the White House when President Trump did something that 12 previous presidents, including conservative icon Ronald Reagan, yes, even Ronald Reagan, lacked the courage to do.
It is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. I am also directing the State Department to begin preparation to move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Bravo, Mr. President. That step is long overdue. It's bold, it's brave, it's the right thing to do. Now listen to Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. As expected, he wasn't happy.
We reject the decision of President Trump in its entirety and also in its particulars. We believe America, with this position, has distanced itself greatly as a political actor in the Middle East because it will not get back its previous role here. We communicated with the entire world, and fortunately, there was a positive response from all the countries in the world, from Europe and from Africa, and countries close to America that don't support the U.S. in this behavior. These all are messages to Trump that what he did is an unacceptable crime.
Palestinians will kick and scream like spoiled children. After all, they've been getting their way for many years now, too many. The United States and other Western countries have caved into their demands and have sent them billions of dollars. And for what? You can't buy peace. We're no closer to peace in the Middle East now after decades of this appeasement policy. Now we have a president who symbolically is saying no more. The Palestinians must do their part to demonstrate their sincerity. They still won't recognize Israel's right to exist. They still urge their children to go and kill Jews wherever they may find them. How can Israel negotiate peace with those still committed to destroying her? Jerusalem has always been a major sticking point in peace talks, but no longer. It's off the table. In one stroke of the pen, Trump has shown that the people of the United States stand with their ally Israel, the only true democracy in the Middle East. And to my Muslim friends, I say this. Jerusalem has been the capital of the Jewish people for at least 3,000 years, long before Muhammad and Islam. Yes, do your research without bias. Look at the historic and archaeological evidence. Maybe even try reading, the Bible. The Quran says you should. But back to Trump. The president's action is a defining moment for the Middle East. It can go one of two ways. A new era of true peace solutions, prosperity can be ushered in, or the same old cycle of war, bloodshed, poverty, and violence will prevail. So Christians, if you ever prayed for Israel, now is the time. Let's not forget to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Well, that's it from the Global Lane this week. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, and iTunes. Until next time, be blessed.